Is that me or the fear talking? I don't know anymore.
Real music.
If you're anything like me, you're probably like a kid anxiously waiting for Christmas morning because NF just released that he's dropping his newest EP on November 14th. 6 epic songs, which we have been in a drought for almost 1,000 days since he released Hope back in spring of 2023. And so in this video, I want to completely break down what fear means from the complexity of NF's lyrics and how it applies in your own life and solutions to overcoming fear that I've learned from my medical education.
Is that me or the fear talking? I don't know anymore.
His entire discography is a masterclass in wrestling with the mind, but no theme is more central, more haunting than fear. Now, real fans will know that NF had 2 albums prior to Mansion, Moments and I'm Free. But for the sake of popular opinion, Mansions was where he started gaining traction, and it was his debut record album, if I understand correctly. And so starting with this song, Mansion, which is also the title of the album, he has this line where he says,
Fear came to my house years ago. I let him in.
That's kind of the inception point, as I understand it, for this entire wrestle with fear, that he's letting him in. It's a willing action. It's not passive. But if we understand, we recognize that fear infiltrates our life in a similar way. And this is going to be the launch pad for every following album that we hear from him, leading up to Running, which will be the end of this discussion, and how there's maybe hope on the horizon. The second big instance of fear in Mansion is what I hinted in the intro, where he says, "Is that me or the fear talking? I don't know anymore." Those 2 lines can be broken up into this dichotomy, this split of the person, where you start realizing that the things we do, the things we say, end up not resonating with the character or who we think we are to ourselves. And there's a question of, is this the subconscious and the conscious? Is this the past trauma and the present? Is this my own person? Is there another person that is putting an external influence on me? And how does NF navigate this? We're going to get into intro 3, but we realize Mansion is going to be a metaphor for his mind. And in it, he has his rooms. And the rooms are categorized according to his own OCD diagnosis. And so OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, you're going to want to try to compartmentalize sections of your life to make them more orderly. That is what we understand it to be. And so having rooms in a mansion keeps things within their bounds, keeps life organized and orderly according to how we wish it to be fashioned. And so you can see that he lets fear into this mansion, into his mind. And once fear is there, it's hard to get him to leave. Again, in intro 3, he mentions like the back of my mind or my backyard depends how you see it. And in those lines, you realize like, okay, maybe there is something else here. There's this tension where he's trying to say like, fear, get out. And fear just comes back and he's like, was that me or you writing those lines? Like, I've been here the whole time. I'm the one who really supported you. And we can see how the brain plays tricks on us. And so I want to start with a little story. Say hello to the board of fear. Ooh, fancy. I know, you can applaud. But story time. So this is your amygdala. In the science world, we see this as part of the limbic system, or what controls all your emotions, including fear. We think of fear as arising from this region of the brain, that when we're afraid, when we're scared, this area of the brain is going to light up like the 4th of July. And new research, however, is maybe contradicting this. There was a recent 2025 study done by the University of Colorado Boulder that experimented on mice, not humans, but analogous enough. And they discovered a new part of the brain, near the brainstem, little section called the interpeduncular nucleus. And this region turned out that when they were scaring the mice, this ended up lighting up the most. They were able to track this section of the brain to being another fear center that's independent of the amygdala. And that fascinated them because this section of the brain was able to become desensitized to the fear stimulus. The mice were able to overcome fear when exposed to this stimulus for a long time. And I think there's a lot of value in understanding this for our own application. You see, from Mansion, NF goes through the next from Perception and then to the next EPs and then to now Hope. And along that journey, and of course I can't miss out on The Search because that one was huge, But throughout that journey, he is almost desensitizing himself to those stimuli of fear, while at the same time recognizing that fear may just be such an integral part of him, he doesn't know how he can separate. In fact, he mentions in intro 3, he's like, is that me or the fear talking? What a dumb question.
Is it me or the fear talking? What a dumb question!
Does that not imply that he's realizing that these aren't two separate people, these aren't two separate minds or trains of thought, they're one and the same. And it is our own mind that is at battle with itself. And this new section puts more of a physical spin on it, that there's a physical part of the brain that could be intimately involved in how we respond to fear, how we grow from it, how we overcome it. And so for me, I am your definition of a scared person growing up. I loved doing gymnastics training, but I could never do a backflip. And so I would train and train and train in the foam pit. Could never throw one. I had spotters, I had extra implements, I had the foam pit, could not throw one. And so over time, I let that fear seep in, that I was just too scared to do this. I was someone who would look before I leap, and then even if the leap isn't dangerous, I'd still not leap, and I'd just look. And there's a question of like, why? What am I afraid of? What are you afraid of that is limiting your potential, that's limiting what you want for your life? And so I had to put myself in situations where I'd take one step further. We got this giant beanbag in my house. And one day I was like, you know what? If I break my neck, at least it's fluffy. And I threw a backflip and landed on my chest. And so not a full backflip, but just landed there. And then I was like, oh, that didn't hurt. Bam. My interpeduncular nucleus was like, hey, I guess we can desensitize this fear a little bit. I throw it the next time, land on my knees, throw it again. I actually stand up for the first time on a beanbag. And so I have now started to desensitize that fear in my life, that fear which was completely taking hold of me and not letting me go. And that carried over to other things, public speaking, extreme introvert.
Why am I talking right now to you? Well, the camera's a little less scary, right?
But public speaking, arguably the largest fear for Americans, but something that can completely separate you in your life because communication is everything. And so from a young age, I was forced to act on stage, to perform in plays for my school. And through that, again, I was desensitizing that nucleus. I was putting myself out where fear was becoming less of a concern. And what I didn't mention is that this is actually a dopamine reaction. Dopamine is influencing this desensitization of fear. But through these public speaking events and then forcing myself to join speech and debate my sophomore year of high school, I was able to overcome that fear and actually enjoy doing something because I know that it would be beneficial for me. And so we have to purposely put ourselves in positions we know are good for us, even when fear is going to be present in those moments. Because what is fear? Fear is false evidence appearing real. Other people put it, fear is a mile wide, but an inch deep. And that's a powerful statement to think of, because in our life, fear can seem all-encompassing, like it's the end of the world if we take that next step. But if you take that next step, you realize that the water barely covers the bottom of your foot. You realize that the fear itself was so thin that once you step into it, you realize that courage was so much more worthwhile. But just because we see it as this wide, vast plane of fear where we don't know what our next step's going to be, we don't take that step. False evidence appearing real. Fear. I ended up being terrified of swimming and terrified of throwing backflips. So how about throwing a flip while cliff jumping? That doesn't sound like me at all. But here I am at a retreat, and maybe peer pressure is involved, and that's how you get over your fear. But I, for the first time, jumped off of a cliff into the water. Me, terrified of swimming, terrified of heights, terrified of flipping. And I attribute that to the Army RTC program I put myself in. It forced me to grapple with that fear of heights because it put me on a 60-foot tower where I had to willingly throw myself off. Fortunately, there was a rope involved to rappel down the tower. And so when we put ourselves in these situations where we have to confront fear or risk failure, we have to look across that mile-wide plane and say, wow, it's only an inch deep. I can do this with the help of others around me. And so we see the progression of NF's music as he starts to navigate through this. He's like, wow, I was in the cage the whole time, but I'm the one holding the keys. That key is that next step. And we see each of these contribute to this new study that actually you can train your brain to become less fearful, given your exposure to those stimuli that desensitize you to that fear. False evidence appearing real. And then we move into the search. And now he's starting to search for something greater. He's realizing that there is breakthrough around the corner, but that fear is still trying to take a hold because it's more familiar. He writes songs about this, and now there's also this growing tension of the audience expectations as they've come to him for such dark and deep music that when he's trying to break free from it, is that even authentic? Is that himself? Or does he feel constrained and trapped to the environment of which he had been singing? And this is a new fear, is how can I actually please my audience while still pursuing what I know is to be true and good and beautiful? New fear. And so sometimes when we break through a fear, a new one, like a hydra, grows in its place. And sometimes it has even more heads that we have to face head on. I want to move on to hope. And so in hope, we see that there is this new battle. He's back in the mansion. He crashes through the floor. And one of my favorite transitions in all of music video history. It's up there, cinematic, 1 out of 10. And here he is. He opens the door.
Necessary evil, difficult to go through, yes, but beneficial. Some would say having a mental breakdown is a negative thing, which on one hand I agree, but on the other hand,
he goes back into his fear. And that's the next thing. We can't avoid our fear, but sometimes we have to return to the place that's hardest for us to be able to overcome it. Think about that. Where is that in your own life that you've been trying to ignore, but you've had to confront it face on? As I've shown with these examples in my own life. So NF is now in the mansion and he opens and he sees the balloons which are both weightless and the heaviest things he has, because these are the burdens we carry with us throughout our lives. It's super simple to let go, but it's extremely hard to do so. We feel better having the comfort of our burdens than the unfamiliar, this scared new terrain of letting them go, because now we have nothing to hold. And sometimes having something to hold, even if it's bad for us, even if it's fear, is going to be easier to choose than that which is unfamiliar. And so he goes into the mansion and he comes out and he has this epic battle with this 360 camera on top of this like sheer cliff face over the water.
30 years of hollow, 30 years of sorrow, 30 years of darkness, 30 years of hate, 30 years of baggage, 30 years of sadness, 30 years of stagnant, 30 years of change, 30 years of patience, 30 years of suffering, 30 years of torment, 30 years of...
He's like 30 years of running, 30 years of pain, 30 years of this and 30 years of that. And he's showing the visual fight, this going to conquer his own fear in this battle and his own inner tension with it. And we face this on a daily battle. How often when you wake up, do you have fear of going into work in the morning? Or for me, for school in the morning, rather than having a character of love and hope and kindness and courage of going into this place and being able to be a positive influence on others' lives in it. Think about that. Where are we like NF in this final scene, grappling our own mind just to find the courage and energy and strength to step out of our bed?
You're the one afraid, I'm the one in charge, I'm taking the reins.
We end up seeing that he says, I'm the one holding the reins. What does that look like? What does it look like to hold the reins in your life? To look at that interpeduncular nucleus and say, I've been exposed to enough fear stimuli. I am now in control of how I approach this. I look out across a mile-wide plain of fear and I take that next step to realize it's 1 inch deep, because I don't have to be fearful of drowning in it. And in that, you've taken control of the fear in your life. I like what Psalms 34:4 says. It's attributed to King David, you've probably heard of. But he says, I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. And this is a whole separate battle online, but NF says he's not a Christian rapper. And that's true, it's not an occupation, it's an identity that we are children of God. And in that we place our hope and our faith and our strength and our courage to know that in him we have no fear. I think it's fascinating. The phrase that appears most frequently throughout the Bible is do not fear. If that doesn't tell you how influential and negative fear is on our life, then I don't know what does. But in that, we realize we've now come to running. It's the conclusion of NF's latest album before this new album, Fear, comes out, and he's mentioning how he's finally trying to run away from the fear that he has had.
I've waited long enough, I'm ready, I can see the sun, it's coming. Oh, there's happiness on the horizon, I'm hopeful I can see the light. I've hesitated all my life, but I'm all done.
He's now embracing, realizing he needs to get away, that in fear, he wasn't moving ahead. Even back to managing, he says, broken legs, but I chase perfection.
Broken legs, but I chase perfection.
In running, he is now able to break free from the chains that fear had held on his life. He is running towards hope. So the 6 songs in this upcoming Fear EP is Fear, Home, Who I Was, with MGK, Give Me a Reason, who we've mostly heard from the Michael Chandler walkout song, Sorry with James Arthur, and last thing is Washed Up. So in each of these, I'm curious, how will these apply to this overarching theme of fear? I'm guessing that NF is going to realize that he hasn't completely broken free. Hope gave us that sense of, oh, he's finally breaking free from it, and fear is going to pull us back in, much like Shakespeare does with these highs and lows, and it's just going to be that much more impactful to realize we are all still going through a journey at different rates. That one day we can take 2 steps forward, but feel like we're taking 3 steps back the next. And so we see things like Washed Up. Is that applying to his music career? Is that applying to his sense of freedom? We see Who I Was. That could be a great breakout song for realizing that fear no longer has that control in his life, while recognizing that fear is still a motivator for one's life. That we have to be conscious every day to overcome its influence, because we know fear is everywhere. But again, it's false evidence appearing real. This is going to be hopefully just a little thing to satisfy us. It's going to be like a little snack before the big entree, which hopefully is out next year, which is going to be a new album. And maybe then we'll get to better explore how he has been able to process and break free from fear and its influence. And hopefully we can better examine our own lives through this process to live lives with less fear, more hope and more courage. With that, the board of fear is going to be removed. As always, make each heartbeat count.